let's kind of set the stage, first of all, on what led us up to meeting, because it was quite the journey that I9 Sports was on that led to us getting together.
It has been an amazing journey. And so I've told people oftentimes there's no way in the world I could have ever plotted how this has unfolded. So if I might, I'll give a little background on my professional journey and what led to our introduction. So by way of background, I'm a marketing guy. I had my early career in consumer products marketing. And it was wonderful training because the training I got was from people that had been in some of the classical packaged goods marketing houses, Procter and Gamble and Quaker Oats and some of those companies. And it was really good training for me because it taught me how to strategize and plan and organize and build process. So I learned a lot. But over the course of 20 plus years of experience in corporate America and getting up into executive management, while I love the people I was working with, I just didn't feel that personal and emotional connection to the products and the services that I was leading and delivering. And got to a point where I wanted to step out and do something that was more in alignment with my personal mission and values and something more entrepreneurial. So I left corporate America and was in this period of searching for that thing that would give me that sense of greater fulfillment. And in that period, I even got to this point of saying, well, gosh, I can't quite find that exact thing, so I think I'll build it. And started building my own business that I was going to bootstrap and launch. And in that period of time, was taking on some marketing consulting gigs to help keep some cash flow going. And in that phase, was reached out to by a guy by the name of Joe Matthews. And Joe Matthews, for those on the call who may not know who Joe is a very well-known franchise expert and works a lot on the operational side of the house. And was already working with this little company called I9 Sports, which was a startup franchisor in the Tampa area. And Joe was doing some work on the ops side of the house, but in his work, he realized that they also needed some marketing help. And he called me up and he said, hey, Brian, I've got this opportunity for you. Would you be interested in having a conversation with their founder, Frank Fiume? And at the time, when I dug into it a little bit more and the fact that this was a youth sports type of a business, I thought, wow, this could really be something that aligns with what I'm looking for. Yeah, I'll help him out. So called you up, Frank, and introduced myself. And we agreed that we were going to work together on a consulting arrangement. And I hopped on a plane, flew down to Tampa, and off we went.
That's right. And lo and behold, here's what was really happening before you and I met. What led us up to us meeting mutually through Joe Matthews was when we started in Tampa, Florida, we were selling franchises. That wasn't really our issue, but our big issue was getting that critical mass of our franchisee success. We were seeing very limited success. We had a whole lot of problems. First off, we had issues where we didn't really have a marketing plan. Part of the problem was we were doing adult sports and youth sports at the time, so our brand was highly diluted, and our training and support was definitely subpar. Our technology was kind of the backbone of our company, which was great. But also we had some staffing issues too. We had we had people that were, they had huge hearts, but probably weren't the best people to take the organization to the next level. And I went to a IFA event down in Hollywood, Florida to seek help. And believe it or not, Joe Matthews was hosting a seminar on franchise sales. And the funny thing is, Brian, franchise sales wasn't even what our problem was. We were selling franchises. It was getting our franchisees successful, which was the issue at hand. And I'll never forget, I went to Joe and I said, Joe, we're going out of business fast. We're kind of going down in a blaze of glory here. And we need to turn things around. And I really need help marketing wise. And sure enough, Joe said, I've got the guy for you. And that's how we got together, of course. But it's interesting that we met Joe, whose expertise is in franchise sales, and that wasn't even where the problem, lied.
Well, again, it was just one of those strange coincidences of the cosmos that brought us together.
For sure. So how about this? I know that we have people that are emerging franchisors listening. We have aspiring entrepreneurs maybe looking to franchise their concept. I want to ask you, really, as the consultant, when you came in to help us, what were you looking for in your assessment of the situation? In other words, what was your overall impression of the company, and what were the things you looked for to try to diagnose where the problems were?
Yeah, as a consultant, one of the first things you want to do is you want to come in and kind of take a read of the lay of the land. What is the landscape? Who are the key players? Kind of get a read of the culture. And then for me, knowing what my assignment was, it was how do I identify what that big opportunity is? What is it in this case that I9 Sports stood for that was going to be unique and different from the others in the competitive set? Lay of the land, unique value proposition, if you will. And then the third thing is what are the inhibitors? What are the barriers that are standing in the way of this organization starting to pursue that big opportunity ahead of it?
And I'll never forget when you first started interviewing franchisees. I remember that was like your first task at hand when you were saying, okay, I just want to get kind of lay of the land of what our franchisees are saying. And just the fact that you went in there and asked them, how are things going? What's working? What's not working? Suddenly things started opening up right away. It allowed you to kind of triage the situation. And if you remember, what were some of your initial findings?
Yeah, it's remarkable. Sometimes just having the title of consultant takes the lid off things and gives people license to tell you things they would never tell someone else, particularly within the organization. Telling a consultant doesn't feel like being disloyal or saying that something's broken. They don't mind sharing those things. And so when I came in, I interviewed your staff, and then you gave me a list of a representative sample of the then current franchisees. So you gave me some high performers, you gave me some middle of the pack performers, and you gave some people that were in trouble. And so I created a list of questions that I was going to ask each of them so that we could roll up the answers in some type of a consistent method, and then share back with you and say, okay, here are the findings. But what I heard without exception was a deep commitment to what the business stood for. They loved the mission of the business. They believed in what I9 Sports stood for, which was helping kids succeed in life through sports. They really were bound to that emotionally. That was great. But beyond that, what I heard, just to kind of summarize in a simple way, was they were looking for a winning formula that they didn't feel they had. They didn't have a blueprint for success. They didn't have an understanding of their own unit level economics. So they didn't know if they were really winning. At the end of the day, that's the best way for them to determine if they're winning or not is, am I making money? And then, there were a whole host of little things, the marketing tools. I asked a battery of questions on what worked, what didn't, and those kinds of things. And there were a lot of really good practices out there that they were doing, but they were doing them in a one-off fashion, and it was not shared. Those best practices were not they weren't visible to everybody across the network.
Yeah, and one of the things that I give you all the credit in the world for is crystallizing the I9 experience, because we did have franchisees operating differently, really, from sport to, even in the same sport, they were operating just a little bit different. And they would say, well, it's different in my area and I have to do this and I have to do that. So one of the big challenges we had, despite they were starting to grow and they were starting to make money, but we really had to get everybody on the same page. It's literally we were building the plane on the way down, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's so typical in the new franchise system, because my takeaway, I remember talking with you, as my takeaway is this is no different than any other startup franchise system, because you end up with this amoeba effect, because the people that you have coming into a new franchise system are going to, by nature, be very entrepreneurial, right? Because they don't mind taking a flyer on a concept that hasn't been officially proven yet. And so that entrepreneurial spirit that each of those owners have leads them to grab the reins and want to build things, which can be good, but it also can be challenging, because you have, at this time, I think there are about 37 franchisees. Mm-hmm. Imagine having a team of horses, 37 horses, all hooked up to reins and all going in 37 separate directions, which leaves you as the founder in the middle getting torn to death, trying to rein them in. And that was kind of what was going on.
Yeah. I would say that the reason why we survived that is what I think we've always said is the constant and never ending improvement. One thing the franchisees we could always guarantee them is that we were always open-minded and willing to change. And we did make some mistakes along the way, but we learned from our mistakes quickly, and we didn't make the same mistake twice for the most part. And we were listening to them. We realized that we had to work together. And despite all the challenges, I would say it's incredible that we turned everything around, whether it was the marketing plan, operations, support, building on our technology, and we were still selling franchises at the same time. In other words, we were still selling the dream. And I go back to 2006, and just when we thought we had everything licked and we finally had our problems behind us, because we turned things around relatively quickly, it was then we had to abandon the NFL flag name because we didn't want to give away our data to a third party. And, that's a whole other story. But I had this realization that over the years of growth, because after you did this initial consulting, we would stay in contact from time to time. And it was really from that 2006 to 2008 timeframe where you and I would chat every once in a while. And I had this realization, we got to about 2008, that I was like, I really need somebody to help me day to day. I need a president. I need a COO. And I'll never forget that faithful conversation that we had that one day. And you said, I want to throw my hat in the ring. And I was just so shocked. The financial crisis had just begun. You and your wife had just got done building your dream home up in Connecticut. And I never thought in a million years I never even considered you, because I didn't even think it was even going to be an option for you to uproot your life for I9 Sports. Where was your head at? What were you thinking?
Yeah, what were you thinking? Exactly. Well, again, I think timing is everything. So as I mentioned earlier, I had been looking at building and launching my own business, and I've been bootstrapping it. And in the process of building it over the course of a couple of years, you obviously forego the income that you would be getting from other things. I was getting a little bit from consulting and other things, but it wasn't certainly not what I had been getting prior to leaving the corporate world. So as I saw the economy heading off a cliff, this was in the fall of 2008, I was at a decision point. I was at the classical fork in the road. And it was, do I continue to go down this path of launching my own business, which is going to involve a lot more investment than I had the willingness to spend? Or do I reach back and look at some other opportunities? And it was in looking at that particular fork where I said, well, gosh, I9 was something that really felt good to me. I felt the alignment of mission. I think this is an organization that I could be part of and help if there's that opportunity. And again, timing. Lo and behold, Joe and I had another conversation. We were chatting about things, and he said, hey, have you talked to Frank recently? And I said, no. He said, well, I9 Sports is going great guns. I hear he's looking for a president COO. You ought to give him a call. So I did.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.